Good morning, everyone.
Good morning,
Good
Rabbi.
morning.
Ketavach Shuatov. We are learning Mishna Kiddushin. Today's Mishnah is sponsored by the Garland children, L'Zeicha Nishmas, their uncle Garviel ben Moshe Nachum, the Shamash Havan Aliyah.
Amen.
Okay, now, Nechasim Sheish Lem Achrayis, property that have, so to speak, responsibility, which really means like this. When you lend somebody money, so you're going to collect from him money, and if at the end of the day he has nothing but land to collect from, that's where you're going to collect from. And the truth is that land is really your most guaranteed form of payment because land doesn't move anywhere, right? If you have movable articles, cash, you can get rid of it. You can, and the lender has nowhere to turn. But when there's land, there's always where to turn to. So the word achrayus, we translate as responsibility, or like the word achar, to go after. You always have the ability to go after those properties. So nechasim shalem achrayus really means real estate, land, properties that you can go back to, meaning land. Niknin bekesef can be acquired with money, right? You can go ahead and give money to the buyer gives money to the seller, and with that he purchases the land. Ubishtar, or with a document. The document says, basically my field is hereby acquired by you, or the like, or my field is sold to you, my field is given to you. You express in the shtar, the document, that this is being transferred to the buyer or to the receiver, whatever it may be. Ubechazaka. And the third way is chazaka, which means an act of ownership. That means the buyer does an act showing that he owns the property. For example, he digs a hole in the property. Now, he's not digging a hole to mess things up. It has to be clear that, the kind of thing that he's doing can be seen as something constructive. But once he acts like an owner in the land, that is an act of acquisition to acquire the land. So therefore, the Mishnah says now that this is how land is bought, these three ways. Now, properties that don't have responsibility, meaning properties that are movable. Movable objects, you could always hide, you could always scatter. So therefore, by land, we say there's responsibility, which actually the way that it's explained is that the lender always relies on the fact that he can go back to that. When it comes to movable objects, you can't rely on that because who says it's going to be around? That's why movable objects are called nechasim that don't have responsibility, and the properties you can't go back to, rather. A niknin elam mashicha. There's only one way to acquire them, and that is through the act of mashicha, which means by taking the object and drawing it closer to yourself. If you draw the object closer to yourself, that is called mashicha. That's a means of acquiring. And actually, as we learned previously by the animals, you also have agba, you also have lifting them up, you also have masira, handing it over. All these things, whatever is the usual method of acquiring the object, that is the method that you can use. Okay, now, so that's movable objects. Movable objects are not going to be acquired, according to the way the Mishnah is saying, not going to be acquired with money, not with a document, only through mashicha, only basically by taking it to you, either by drawing it to you, lifting it up, having it handed over in some way. These things work, again, as they say here, depending on whatever is the usual method for acquiring that object. Then the Mishnah continues, nechasim she'en lemachrayis, movable objects, niknin im nechasim she'esh lemachrayis, can be acquired together with real estate, with land, bekesef or b'shtar b'chazaka, with the money or the document or the act of ownership that you do on the land. Meaning, you want to sell somebody both things. You want to buy both things. You want to buy from the same person a piece of land and movable objects. So there we say that if the owner of these objects says to the buyer, acquire the movable objects together or along with the land, then we say that the kinyan, the act of acquisition you do on the land, will work for the movable objects too. So even though, let's say, kesef, money, doesn't work for the movable object, but if I'm buying land with the movable object, that acquisition on the land can act also for the metaltalin, for the movable objects. That's the word in Gemara, metaltalin, movable objects, can also work in order to acquire that. So as long as the seller goes ahead and he says that you should acquire the movable objects by way of the land, then it'll work. Then when you make the kinyan, when the buyer makes the kinyan on the land, it'll also be a kinyan on the movable objects. So even though typically these are kinyanim we can't do directly on the movable objects as an acquisition, but if you want to acquire the movable objects alongside the land, then the kinyan, the acquisition on the land, will work for the movable objects. And then the last thing the Mishnah teaches is movable objects can bring about as an achasim sheish lemachrayis to real estate, lishava alei, and to swear on them. The rule is ein nishbar ala karkais. The Torah does not put a oath on land. So that's an example, right? If you have movable object, we do say there's an oath. On land there isn't an oath. So for instance, let's say I say to you, you owe me $100, and you say, no, I only owe you 50. You admit it to part of the claim. You have to swear. The Torah now says you have to swear regarding the part that you say that you deny. Let's say I go ahead and I say, you sold me that land. You sold me this piece of land. And you say, no, I only sold you half of it. There's no shua, there's no oath then, because there's a rule. The Torah does not put oaths on regarding real estate. That's the rule. But here the Mishnah says something else. You want to have a way of making a guy have to make an oath on the land? Well, if you go ahead and you demand from him two things. You demand from him movable objects and land, right? Now the land, he said to you, I don't know, it's mine. I never sold it to you. It's all mine. Okay. Now, at the same time, you say to him, or you go ahead at the same time or not, but you say, basically, you go to a person and you say to him, you owe me $100, and he says, no, only 50. Oh, that means now there's a shua, there's an oath he has to make regarding the amount that he denies. Well, once he's already swearing regarding the movable objects, then we can say, okay, we're now going to attach on, or we can now attach on the real estate and make you swear for that also. That's called shuas. That's called, we call that, oh my gosh, I'm getting the word, Gilgal shua, where you basically bring on something that you typically alone would not have to make an oath about. Once you're making an oath about something, you can actually now, so to speak, roll it. You could actually, include, roll it over. You could actually make it that now, once you're swearing on one thing, we can make you swear on something else that typically you wouldn't have to have sworn to. So that's what the Mishnah means when it says that movable objects can bring about an oath on real estate. Once you have to swear on the movable, we can now also make you swear on the land. Have a wonderful day.